Majesty's troops, and as soon as may be, for the most speedily reducing this colony to a proper sense of their duty to His Majesty's crown and dignity. And you're probably thinking, what did I just say? Let me break it down for you. I'm going to come away from the mic so that you can actually engage. Okay, Lord Dunmore is not saying in this proclamation, everyone is free. This is a very politically pragmatic move on the part of Dunmore. What is he saying? He's saying essentially, if you are enslaved to a patriot, then you can come over to the British side and you can fight for the British and you will be declared free. And we will protect you. Listen to what he's not saying. He's not saying that I'm going to unconditionally abolish slavery. This act only pertained to enslaved persons who were owned by patriots. So if you were a white loyalist and you owned a slave, you were a slave. Okay? And at this point, it only pertained to men. So enslaved women did not qualify under the November 7th proclamation. And the reason he does this isn't because Lord Dunmore is some great abolitionist. He does this as a political move. He is trying to weaken his enemy, the patriots. And the best way to weaken his enemy is to take their most valuable property from them. Remember, the patriots often would use, although they didn't always acknowledge it, enslaved persons as soldiers as well. But, George Washington had a valet who was an enslaved person who carried his personal effects into battle. And if you ever look closely at that famous picture of Washington crossing the Delaware, apparently there is Christmas in that picture. And so it speaks to the fact that blacks fought on both sides of the Revolutionary conflict. So what I'm trying to show you is that for Dunmore, this is a tactical move. This is a move that has a very political end. It is not to abolish slavery. It is to give him a tactical advantage in a conflict and to weaken his enemy by taking their greatest asset. And I want you to see that because this is going to be borne out also when we start looking at what Dunmore does in the Bahamas when he arrives here in 1787 as governor. Let's move on. So we want to move on to where did they actually settle in the Bahamas. Now, the black loyalists that came to the Bahamas, most of them embarked from two major seaports along the colonial area. Okay, you have New York and St. Augustine. From New York, we have 95 black loyalists that arrived here on August 21st and 22nd, 1783. And they settled in an area that was eventually called Carleton, named after Sir Guy Carleton, who was, in fact, the leader of the British forces in North America. Now, Carleton, just to give you sort of a conceptual framework as to where it is today, it's located just about where Treasure Key is in Abaco. Okay, that's where Carleton was located, and most of this information is coming from Steve Dodge's work. Okay, he's written quite a bit on Abaco and Carleton. There was also about 350 black loyalists that settled in New Providence, and that information comes in fact from William Wiley's short account. And he differentiates, Wiley does, between the 500 free blacks and coloreds that already are here in Nassau, New Providence, and then he talks about the 350 arriving who say they're either free or pretending to be so. And that's interesting language that he would suggest that they were pretending to be free. It kind of suggests already that there's this contentious battle that's going to take place. They're not pretending to be free. Many of them actually came to the Bahamas with the legitimate documents, certificates of freedom that were issued by the various generals throughout the American Revolutionary conflict. But even if they had certificates of freedom, that didn't always guarantee when they came to the Bahamas and went in front of the courts that they would actually get a favorable ruling. So this is very interesting, I think, for explaining the kind of political contests that are going to take place in the Bahamas after 1783. This is an interesting document. This is actually found in the appendix of Sandra Riley's book, homeward bound. What it is it's called the Book of Negroes. It's a list, a ship register actually, of the two vessels that ended up in Abaco, the William and the Nautilus. And this is part of a larger collection called the Book of Negroes, which is housed in 3 locations. It's housed in the Library of Congress in Washington. It's housed in New York as part of the New York Public Library and Sir Guy Carleton's collection. And if you go to the New York Public Library, which is where I went to look at it carefully, you will have to go, of course, to the Special Collections and Manuscript Division. And the third place that it's located is in Halifax in Nova Scotia. And I say that because it's important to know that what Sandra Riley has done for us, which is really important, is she transcribed the manuscript documents into something that is fairly readable and is actually published in the appendix of her book. Okay, and also actually has a Curry genealogy in the back, which I find interesting, given my namesake. Anyways, what I want to just highlight very quickly is that what this document does, and I know it's difficult to read, but over here, what you have in this column is the names of all of the individuals on those 2 vessels. On this side here, you have a descriptive sort of notation about their appearance, their gender, and then over here, what you have is a very interesting statement. They have at the top here a sentence that reads something like this: in whose possession they now belong. And under this column then is all the white people that have been attached to these black loyalists, in whose possession they are now. And so we're going to talk about what that actually means, in whose possession they are now. This final column is also very interesting. It gives remarks about their struggle for freedom in colonial America. It mentions, for example, where they got their certificate of freedom. It also would mention how they claimed to be freedom, where they were free in Charleston or perhaps in Savannah. And so it gives details about their struggle for freedom in colonial America. And all of this is important because this is going to play out in the Bahamas in a real political context between black loyalists who are aspiring to be free and white loyalists who are trying to re-enslave them. Let's move on. So I want to talk about the language of possession, and this is what I want to say. This idea of whose possession they are now is really significant. Creighton and Saunders suggest that the appellation was intended to establish a form of apprenticeship where former masters would continue to extract work and other responsibilities at the expense of the formerly enslaved. And I really feel this speaks to the kind of contest between black loyalists and whites that's going to emerge in the Bahamas after 1783. Remember, black loyalists have certificates of freedom. They have authenticated documents that say, I am free. White loyalists are coming to the Bahamas to establish cotton plantations. Okay, and they were aspiring to planter status. Well, some of them have enslaved persons in tow. Others lack labor, a labor supply. And so they are going to try and coerce and exploit the labor resources of black loyalists in the Bahamas, in both Abaco and New Providence. Okay. The uneasy tension that I just described in words is actually fairly well articulated by Barry, who becomes the Register General in the Bahamas. This is what he says. This is a very powerful statement. He says, "It is with great pain of mind that I every day see the Negroes who came here from America with the British General's free papers treated with unheard of cruelty by men who call themselves Loyalists. These unhappy people, after being drawn from their masters by promises of freedom and the king's protection, are every day stolen away from these islands, shipped and disposed of to the French at Hispaniola, notwithstanding my utmost endeavor to prevent such barbarity." Now, if you look closely at what Barry is saying, again, like Dunmore, he's not an abolitionist. But what he is concerned about is that these people have legitimate rights to be free. And here are white loyalists, slaveholders in the Bahamas, who are coming in and are trying to treat them as if they are their property. Okay, so this is a cause for concern. This is a contentious issue that is in fact going to boil over into outright rebellion and insurrection within a few years. So Dunmore arrives into this very tense and contentious environment in 1787, and he immediately hears of revolt, an insurrection in Abaco, some of the outlying islands. And so his way of dealing with this is to order a proclamation. He issues it on November 28, 1787. And basically he established by proclamation these ports. They're called Dunmore's Negro ports because he establishes it. And it in fact is to be presided over by the Receiver General and 2 magistrates. And I'll tell you now that the white slaveholders do not like this. This leads to bitter contention between these white loyalists and Dunmore. But it also provides inspiration and hope for black loyalists. Within days, you have black loyalists that are going to come forward and are going to make their case publicly known in these courts. It serves as inspiration to black loyalists initially. But over time, I will also add that it becomes a moment of disenchantment. Okay? And we're going to see why that happens a little later on. So here's one case that I thought I would share with you. This is Matthias, and this is his claim. And this is what he says. Sir, a Negro fellow named Matthias, who calls himself free, has this day applied to me for protection. He having, as he affirms, been taken by His Majesty's troops during the late rebellion, and is of consequence included in the description of Negroes, declared by the King's proclamation to be free. So listen to what happens. As the laws of these islands direct, that in all cases where the freedom of any Negro shall be in contestation, the same shall be determined by the Receiver General for the time being